reported attacks. Boston, Philadelphia.
Maryland. White House officials claims the CIA has a defense against chemical weapons.
I don't understand what you're saying. She says everyone's dead outside.
What's going on?
We lost contact.
With whom?
Everyone.
Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast that wouldn't die. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, as always, is Aaron.
Hey ho.
This week, we'll be discussing the horror sci-fi classic, The Happening, starring Mark Wahlberg, Zoe Deschanel, John Leguizamo. It's an all-star cast. Now, you actually saw this in the theater, is that correct?
All right, so I first saw the What's Happening at the theater, I'm sure opening weekend. And it was a disaster. It's one of those things where I'm like, oh my God, they keep telling us what the answer is. And that really is what the answer is. I kept waiting for something better.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. I remember seeing the ads for this. I did not see it in the theater. In fact, this viewing was my first viewing of The Happening. However, I think someone angrily told me what the twist wasn't much of a twist. Let's be honest, because you're right. Like 45 minutes into the movie, there's like some guy who has a greenhouse says, it's probably the plants are doing this. If they don't have people telling you it's the plants, there's no way you'd ever get it. You'd have no idea what's causing people to flip out. They have to have people who are just like, and again, spontaneously reach this conclusion based upon nothing, just kind of conjecture. Well, could be the plant.
Anyway, 30-second synopsis. People start killing themselves. All through the entire movie, everyone keeps saying, maybe it's nature. Well, you know what? It is frickin' nature. Apparently, there's some poison pollen that causes you to kill yourself. And then, apparently, after 24 hours, it just stops. And the nature's angry. Grass is angry. And they communicate with the grass and the trees by, rustling. And then people were like, oh, it was only the East Coast. It's probably the government. If it had only happened somewhere else. And then people start killing themselves in Paris. I'm like, that wouldn't help Americans. They'd be like, it's socialism. Hey.
Right. Okay, you know what? We're already doing this, but let's just jump right into the highlights, or as I call it, WTF. That I wrote that down. That opening scene with the redheaded girl, who's actually in another movie we reviewed. She was the main character from Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, I did not recognize it.
This is the only other thing I've seen her in. But she's talking to her blonde friend. They're sitting in the middle of Central Park. Her friend's now like everybody else. First you freeze when you become possessed or whatever, hypnotized.
There's always like a scream in the distance.
Right.
So
what's that happening? What's going on over there?
Everyone comments on that, and then it kind of rolls your way like one of those rolling earthquakes.
Right. So first her friend freezes. Then her friend kind of says some kind of gibberish. And then she proceeds to pull out of her hair, I don't know, a railroad spike.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was very weird. Like in the 80s, there was a thing of putting chopsticks in your hair, but no one puts just a single knitting needle. It's not even in a bun to hold the bun. It's just I have a giant knitting needle in my ponytail.
I have an 8-inch steel spike that I carry around with me, and she proceeds to just jam it into her neck. Blah.
Fantastic.
No blood, by the way, which I found kind of interesting. I don't know if that's part of the deal. Good Lord.
But no pain. I made a note down. All these people that are killing themselves in terrible waves seem completely out of it.
Right.
So right away, I'm like, better than getting eaten by a zombie.
Well, and then there were a couple of those death scenes that were so ridiculous, it almost made you laugh.
Yeah, it's like, really? If you have the urge to kill yourself, you're going to come up with some of this elaborate shit?
Well, the one guy, there's a scene with the dude in the lion cage. And he's just like holding his hand in front of the lion's mouth. Come on, lion.
Yeah,
come and get it. And the lion proceeds to just literally rip his arm off. which
And then
it looked kind of weak.
He takes the other arm and pets a different lion with
Yes.
it. So that one gets ripped off too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Lickety
overly
split.
complicated.
I mean, like, if you pop the arm off of Barbie, it wouldn't be quite this easy.
It's true. Those lions are very strong. Why don't you just land in their pool and just drown yourself?
I mean, it seemed like there'd be easier things to do. I like later in the movie, the guy starts the giant lawnmower and I don't know, puts a brick on the gas or something, because then it just goes. So this giant lawnmower, industrial lawnmower, is now kind of circling.
And he lays in front of it.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. It's freaking ridiculous.
He lays down, I swear to God, 20 feet in front of it. Luckily, it was turning back in that direction, so I guess, or unluckily, however you want to look at it.
I guess you got to be familiar with your lawnmower. Yeah,
I
that was
guess.
ridiculous. The scene when John Leguizamo and his Jeep gets all infected.
Yes.
It's because there's a tiny slit in the top. Dude, I had a Jeep. It's hardly airtight.
Right.
You didn't need to worry about a tiny slit in the roof of your Jeep. Come on.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of the thing. Cars in general are not airtight. You know, we'd suffocate if they were. Right? We couldn't drive them if they were airtight.
Yeah.
You know?
There's all kinds of logic problems with this.
Right. So it's like, evidently in this movie, you're fine driving through it as long as there isn't a little, like an inch hole in it. Right? I mean, basically is what it is.
So you have to recirculate your air. You bring in the air from the outside.
Exactly. You cannot recirculate. Or what is it? Is it recirculate as it stays, right?
Recirculate is
or
what's
is new air.
inside.
Okay. What is it when it's new air? What's the term for that? I should know this.
I don't know. Non-recirculating.
Non-recirculating. Sweet Lord. So Mark Wahlberg is a science teacher.
He literally gives the answer in the first 5 minutes.
Right. Well, this is like a weird, like alternate present, because they're like, the bees have all disappeared. You know what I mean? Like, evidently, the plants have killed all the bees? Is that kind of what we're supposed to think?
No, the plants are angry that we killed the bees. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. I thought they were just talking about that they are disappearing.
I could have sworn he said they gone.
They gone. That's possible. I will not argue with you. So,
and it was also like literally a smart ass kid in his class. And I have to comment, I literally wrote this down. This class was amazingly quiet. You know what I'm saying? People quietly listening and responding when the teacher speaks.
It must be a private school.
That's not how it works in my school, I'll tell you what.
And Marky Mark was hardly a compelling teacher.
Not at all.
Playing Super Wimp in this little episode.
This was not Edward James Olmos or somebody, right? So it's like some smart ass kid basically says like, "Hey, we'll never know the answer probably," and instead of being like, "Shut the hell up," which I guess you couldn't say to your student. At least not in my class. Aaron, you might do it in your class.
I might have said it today. I don't know.
He's like, "That's an excellent point." Really? That's what we're teaching in our science class. Hey, there's some things we'll just never know. So why bother searching?
He was just thankful to get an answer that didn't involve the F word.
Well, I mean, is he a substitute teacher? Is this emergency credential? What's the story here? I don't know.
Either way, he's the worst.
And then I'm trying to remember what the timeline is. Do we meet Zooey Deschanel, who's got like a crazy look on her eye, kind of a glassy-eyed, staring into space, 1,000-yard stare kind of thing? Or is it John Leguizamo pulls Marky Mark aside and says, "Hey, I probably shouldn't say this, but on your wedding day, I walked in on your bride-to-be crying her eyes out. Sorry."
Yeah, we're never really sure what's going on with Crazy Lady. And then we find out, like, they're going through problems because she had a dessert with some dude.
No, he didn't know about that. He didn't know.
He doesn't know what the problems are.
They don't elucidate what the issues are in their marriage, except to say that John Leguizamo basically said, "You can't count on her. She'll never commit." Even though they've been married for for 10 years or however long it's been. Like, that was his warning to his about the woman he's been married to for God knows how long.
Yeah, that probably come in handy a little earlier, that deep analysis.
Right. So she's... Go ahead.
She did say yes, and they are, in fact, been married for 10 years. That is some level of commitment.
And she looked, I mean, Marky Mark's looking at the wedding picture. She looked smiling in that. It wasn't like she was weeping and horrified in the wedding. She kept it together
that
then.
Whole thing was all contrived, too. That was stupid. Whatever
Right.
they're going through. It makes her seem really foolish.
Right. Well, so much so that later in the movie, John Leguizamo doesn't trust her, doesn't trust Zoe Deschanel,
Right.
that he has to give his daughter to them. Like, take my daughter. I have to drive to Princeton to make sure my wife's okay. And Zoe's like, I'll take care of her, and tries to hold her hand. And he grabs her and says, like, don't grab my hand unless you mean it. Or what? He says some kind of crazy...
Don't take her hand unless you mean it, or something like that.
Something to that effect. It's just like...
Which bears no... Once you find out what the issue is, you're like, what?
Well, what is the issue?
The issue is that she had dinner with a guy.
Well, he doesn't know that yet. She tearfully admits it an hour and a half into the movie.
That's what I'm saying. John Leguizamo doesn't even know that. So is there a whole piece of the puzzle that nobody knows but John Leguizamo?
Right. We don't know what the issue is at all. Tearfully, Zoe Deschanel admits to Marky Mark, and this Joey's the guy who keeps calling on her cell phone. Stop calling me. Stop calling me. She tearfully admits that she went and had tiramisu with some dude named Joey, but nothing else happened, and she felt guilty about it afterwards.
So to celebrate her marriage, she then, I guess, just shut him down and wouldn't explain why she's been acting weird. Bad attention.
Yes, is that what it is? I mean, so much so.
They're going through something, but Marky Mark has no idea what it is because she won't tell him.
Okay,
is that correct?
I don't even know if that's correct, because John Leguizamo's, I guess, mom says, "Hey, you guys can all come to our house in Harrisburg and bring Marky Mark and Dead-Eyed Zoe. They can come too." And Marky Mark's like, "Sounds good." Oh, John, I don't remember what the characters' names are. He's just like, John Leguizamo, I got to tell you, if Zoe seems distant, don't worry about it. It's just something we're going through. And that's what makes John Leguizamo go like, hey, I probably should have mentioned this 10 years ago, but she was crying in the bathroom on the wedding day.
And again, we're going through something, but Marky Mark has no idea what he's going through. Just his wife is a freak.
We don't even know that much. I mean, for all we know, evidently there was a scene that was edited out.
We have put too much effort into this weird, bullshit, poor writing relationship.
I agree. All I'm going to say is we're kind of putting ourselves in Marky Mark's position where it's like, because we don't know, maybe he doesn't know. And I'm saying we don't even know that.
Right. We don't even know that.
We don't even know that.
We don't even know what we don't know.
That's true. That's true knowledge, is knowing you don't know what you don't know. So wherever they go, they're on trains, or in the train station, they're in the diner. Adults are constantly oversharing horrible details in front of children. Have you noticed that? Non-stop. Because they have John Leguizamo's daughter with them the entire time, and it's constantly.
That's like 9/11, man. That was people are like, don't let your kids sit in front of them. People were just having these terrible discussions in front of kids, because I think all that screening goes away during a disaster.
You're just oblivious to your child crying next to you.
You just don't even give a shit.
Clearly not. So they get on the train and they're trying to go to Harrisburg or something, and the train just gets pulled over. They just say, "Oh, we're just going to pull over," and because I guess they're unable to reach anybody on their radios.
Is that a good reason to just stop the train?
I think
just
that's
like
the
going.
opposite of a good reason to stop the train. I think you keep going.
At least until you get to a crossroads or something. I mean, I understand you don't want to go head on with another train, but I don't know.
Well, and here's the other
Seemed
thing.
fishy.
Here's the other thing.
Why were there 12 like conductors?
I think some of those were like ticket takers and things like that. People work in the booze car, perhaps. I don't know.
Booze car.
Isn't that what it's called? I don't know.
The club car.
The club car, thank you. Not the booze car. But here's the thing. They establish early on that this is only affecting the Northeast. So it's kind of like New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, that sort of thing. And no one in this movie even once tries to call anybody outside of that area.
Yeah, that was weird. See, I didn't realize at the beginning that it was just affecting the Northeast.
Right.
I mean, I guess they had radio reports, but that does explain why the TV's still on. It doesn't explain why the radio would be cutting in and out, but you would think that would also still be rolling.
Well, I guess it just depends on the range.
I guess.
You know, what station are you listening to? That's
KFI, man. Sometimes at night when it was cloudy, those AM stations travel. I could get that up in Humboldt County.
There you go. That explains it all.
There's your answer.
So everybody on the train gets off and goes to the diner, where they're like, "We got to get out of here, or we're all gonna die." And suddenly, everybody on the train now has a car. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, someone's picking them up in the middle of nowhere. It makes no sense. That is correct.
Except for...
I think we've established this movie makes no effing sense.
It makes no sense. Luckily, two different cars are like, "Hey, you can come with us." One car happens to be going to Princeton, New Jersey. Isn't that convenient?
Yes. Even though they were traveling, in the opposite direction?
Yes, that is correct. And the other car is like, "Hey, we're going to go west for some reason. We're going in opposite directions." So John Leguizamo gets in one, and they're sitting there having this long dissertation. Like John Leguizamo's like, "Oh, I'm going to have to go alone. They only have room for one. You got to take my daughter. Don't take her hand, blah, 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 blah." While all the other cars are just sitting there waiting. Cool. Yeah. Finish your discussion. We're good. I mean, how about this? I'm leaving. If you're going to sit and talk for half an hour, I'm going.
Down. Just hunker down, man. Hunker down.
Well, and somebody made the point that at no time, okay, so you get infected with the spores or whatever, right?
Okay.
And you promptly try to kill yourself in the most elaborate method possible, essentially.
The most ridiculous, stupid, painful if you were aware way, yes.
No one ever goes like, "I'm just going to tie myself to this chair. And then I should be cool."
How about when my friend is gonna take a crochet hook and crochet their brains out? No one says, "Why don't you sit down?"
Well, presumably they're also kind of under the influence or something. They're all poking themselves.
Under the influence of crazy.
Of crazy, that's what I'm saying. Because the thing about this, because I've seen a million movies where it's kind of a similar basic premise, like there's something in the air, there's something in the water, and it makes people go crazy.
Right.
Okay. There's been a million movies like that.
The birds.
The birds, the crazies. There's always something going on.
Right.
But this is the first movie where literally it's people harming themselves. So I guess Bird Box is kind of like that too.
Oh, I forgot about Bird Box.
Yeah, Bird Box is vastly superior. Let's be honest.
Except for the end, which is bullshit.
Well, because at some point it all falls apart on all these kind of things. But again, if you literally tied yourself down, you'd be fine, because there isn't going to be somebody who's under the influence of crazy coming to kill you.
Right. No one's coming to kill you, but it's too late because you're crazy.
Well, I guess people don't know.
If you knew, you could.
Well, I mean, Marky Mark susses it out eventually with the help of the botanist. I don't know what the hell he was. Guy who had a greenhouse. Farmer.
I'm not even sure he knew that was right, or if he was just rolling.
Something like that. Who's to say? Good Lord. they constantly are talking about he has a mood ring that he's constantly wearing for some reason.
Oh my God. I was at lunch yesterday and somebody had a mood ring. She's like, it's always purple. I'm like, that means you're horny.
Is that what it means?
Well, according to this movie, that's what they said. They looked it up.
Well, and there's no explanation. Like, literally, he goes home at the beginning of the movie to get Zoe Deschanel and to run to the train station. And he makes a special point to grab his mood ring off the nightstand table and put it on.
Maybe that's their wedding rings.
No, that would be a crazy wedding ring. He's got a wedding ring.
Once again, you're trying to add logic into the fever-pitched mind of M. Night Shyamalan.
Well, but I mean, how? If this is important enough, where it's like he's talking, he's giving it to the little girl, hey, means that you're about to laugh, and oh, it's so sweet. You think there'd be one moment where you're like, well, on our first date, we went to the frickin' carnival, and I won it, the crazy guy guessed my weight, or so, throw 2 lines, it was from our first date, and it has some sentiment. Give me something.
All I can say is it must be this movie was 6 hours long explaining all this crap. And they just went and said, dude, we're taking this away from you because you've lost touch with reality. And they just cut it to ribbons.
Because the happening is happening to you as well, is basically the moral of the story.
Name, oh my God.
Right. We're going to talk about the name and all that good stuff behind the scenes. There's a point where Marky Mark, he's gotten in the car with the hydroponic farmers in the greenhouse, whatever the hell they are.
Yes.
And the farmer comes and says, hey, I got some hot dogs. Anybody want a hot dog? Hot dogs are underrated. They're protein. They got a fun shape. You want a hot dog, Marky Mark? He's just like, no. Turns to Zoe Deschanel.
That doesn't seem like a food that travels well.
Well, it's like, look, there are a million other foods I would choose before a hot dog, but the idea that everybody in the group hates hot dogs, like, no, I won't eat that. I will go hungry before I eat a hot dog. Zoe Deschanel, how about a hot dog for you? No. I pass. Pass on the hot dog.
Pass out.
It's very sad.
Ridiculous. Why would you choose hot dogs as your traveling food? But I guess the electricity and everything's running, right?
I guess. It's a horror story. It's an American horror story.
Well, I will have I ate a delicious hot dog in Iceland. Why they claim it's the greatest thing ever, I don't know. It was a hot dog. It tasted okay.
Look, there's
you
a
don't go to
wide...
Iceland to eat their hot dogs.
You do not. There's a wide breadth between... There are really good hot dogs out there, and there are lousy hot dogs out there. So
if it costs less than $1, we're just going to call it a lousy hot dog.
You're probably right about that. It's a sad situation.
You were talking about the plant guy.
Yes, lay it on me.
At one point, we see Marky Mark whispering to plants when they've broken into a model home. Good vibes only. And then he realizes it's a plastic plant.
That was a hilarious moment.
That was the hilarious moment.
That was the... Well, he literally he gets super close to the camera and he's just like, I'm talking to a plant, plastic plant, and I'm still doing it. It's hilarious. Good stuff from old Marky Mark.
It's a laugh riot.
It is.
The only way you would go to this movie is if they turn it into some kind of Rocky Horror where you're just openly mocking the acting and the story.
Oh, absolutely. If you watch this with kind of a mockerish eye, it's dynamite. It's dynamite because it's literally, we talked about this briefly. The acting in this movie is horrendous. Horrendous. Zoe Deschanel is like the eyes of a doll.
I saw her in 500 Days of Summer. I loved her in that. Well, I didn't love her in that, but I loved that movie. You almost think this was an acting choice that she made or a direction she got from M. Night to be kind of a simple-minded imbecile. Because it's literally staring into space. She is not actually a ding-dong.
She may be. She may be, but I have never noticed it to this degree.
Well, I mean, think about Elf, her most triumphant role.
Most
It's
triumphant.
not that far. There's no tiramisu that we know of.
Well, here's the thing about it. She was the star of a super popular sitcom for like 8 years.
I never saw it. It
I
looks
never watched it
stupid.
either, but people loved it. People loved it. So she was basically, a bargain basement mannequin. I can't imagine that show would have been on for as long as it was. You know what I mean? And she's not the only one. Marky Mark is horrendous in this as well. It's overacting. It's acting right to the camera. It's like he's totally unbelievable as a
the
science
weirdest-
teacher.
The weirdest teachers are the weirdest acting choices. Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
He's clearly never set foot in a classroom or even attended school.
As a teacher or a student, for all I know. It's a sad situation. When they start, so the crazy old gardener guy first, postulates that it's probably the plants. Just kind of casually, he was very relaxed, just kind of chatting it up, like, oh yeah, it's probably the plants. Probably the plants. And if he doesn't do that, then there's no way an audience member would ever figure out what is causing people to commit suicide.
Yeah, so they realize that nobody knows what the hell's going on, so they have to keep telling you over and
Right.
over. Might be the plants. Might be the plants. Have you thought it was the plants? Maybe it's the plants. What about the plants?
Right. And the plants
Over
don't
and
move.
over again. I've only seen this once before, and I didn't notice it at first. I mean, I heard them say that, and then all of a sudden I was like, motherfucker, they're right. But now, with the second watch, they're literally telling you what it is every 3 seconds.
Right. I mean, typically you watch an M. Night Shyamalan movie and you figure like, oh, here comes the twist. But there really isn't a twist in this movie because they tell you what the twist is 30 minutes into the movie.
Right. So there's no twist.
There's no twist.
It's just nonsense and weirdness and strangeness and Betty
Right.
Buckley acting like a maniac.
Poor old Betty Buckley. No. It is. It's like so you have the plants, and I guess they're putting pollen or something that caused you to go suicidal.
It's a neurotoxin that causes you to kill yourself. Where
Yes.
is that neurotoxin? I'm not familiar with that.
You
I'm
know
sure
it, don't you?
Government agencies would love to get a hold of that.
That's what I'm saying. And well, here's the thing. Like I said, the plants don't move and physically attack you like in Evil Dead or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
They are fully dependent on a breeze coming. You know? They don't control the wind.
Or do
It's
they?
madness. Or do well, that was the thing. It's like they're running and like the breeze is like catching up to them. Oh no, the breeze has come. As far as I know, look, I'm not a meteorologist, I'm not a botanist. Plants do not control the weather. As far as
They
I
don't,
know.
but apparently they can conspire and plot and scheme.
Yeah, clearly. Well, and this is
You
the thing. The
can't just
moment
say it's nature. You can't just say it's nature, and nature, and then the nature is corresponding internationally with other nature in other areas.
right.
It's
That's what they
your turn
do.
now. It's your turn now. It's a warning.
It's what they do. Okay?
Nobody learned anything from the birds. There was all that nature.
Well, and the moment you realize that it's the plants, there are still multiple times where people are like, I'm just going to go sit in these bushes or sit under the tree or lay on the grass. It's like, what are you doing?
You're pissing them off. Get back on the asphalt.
You'd think. Like the place you don't want to go is into the country.
Of course, that's the opposite of where you want to be. That's where it's all you think it's all intensified.
Right.
And then
Sweet
nature
Jesus.
gets angry if there's too many of you. They start releasing all their toxins.
Right. So that's kind of the
smartest
reveal.
people were those two old ladies sitting at home watching TV with their gas masks on. Perfect. Good
That's
job.
exactly what you do. That's
Yeah,
exactly what
Close
you
your
do.
frickin' windows, turn off the AC, and shut the hell up.
So there's, you're right. They kind of reveal like first it attacked Central Park where there's 1 million people or whatever. And then it's like still larger groups, but then smaller and then smaller, as long as you keep in smaller enough groups. But eventually, by the end of the movie, it's like any person that's out by themselves is now going to get hit.
It's pissing nature off.
It's
Yeah.
pissing nature off. No question.
Mhm.
In the middle of the movie, Zoe Deschanel pulls Marky Mark to the side and says, "Hey, I got to. If we die tomorrow, I have to admit to you that I had tiramisu with Joey the other day, and nothing else happened. But I felt really guilty about it."
Okay, now's the good time for that.
That's what I literally wrote that down. I think you take that to your grave. I don't think
it
you let that be your
wasn't
last
even a
thought.
thing. It wasn't even a thing.
Wasn't even a thing. I guess maybe she lied about where she was. Then that's not good. That's not ideal. But I guess it could be kind of a
You dirty
emotional
whore,
cheat.
Zoe.
What? It's an emotional cheat, perhaps, right?
Maybe Betty Buckley should have given her a slap.
She needed it, for God's sakes. So then Marky Mark, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Marky Mark kind of does a joke. He's like, "Hey, I was at the diner and I was checking out all the waitresses," and she's like, "Really?" And he shakes his head no, and she's like, "Thank you."
Oh, Jesus.
It was it was such a
monsters.
bizarre exchange.
They're monsters.
I had to write it down.
They're both,
Are you joking?
They're
Yes,
both
I am.
They have some kind of cognitive issues. I don't know what's happening here.
It's a horror story.
I
Let's
think
see.
one of the most ridiculous parts is at the very end.
Yeah.
Before Paris, it says 3 months later. Everything's fine. We've been dealing with coronavirus for a year and a half. but suicide pollen, snap. 24 hours, 3 months later, it's all good.
Boom. Well, again,
All
we
good.
said 24 hours later, Marky Mark, Zoe Deschanel, the little girl, pick up like two like teenage boys along the way.
Oh, I didn't like that part.
And they
That
go
was
and they're like,
upsetting.
"Hey, little Sally's hungry. Let's see if there's any food in this house." And they're pounding on the door. They realize there's like a disgruntled family or something in this house. And they're like, "Go away, leave us alone. Don't bring that COVID in here," or whatever he says. I'm
Don't
paraphrasing.
bring that COVID in.
And literally, the teenage kids are like, "Hey, we're coming in," and start pounding on the door. And I kept thinking, that's a bad idea.
It's 100%. You've never seen a zombie movie, you bad teenagers. Of course they're armed to the teeth.
Right. So promptly, they get shot to death. Boom, boom. Again, these guys are like 15 or something.
I'd be like, let's burn the house down on our way out. I'd be like, oh my God.
Well, I wrote
That
down,
was so upsetting when they killed those kids.
killed those boys. I was laughing because killed them and then says, "If you don't get out of here in the count of 3, I'll kill you too." It's like, now you're going to count to 3? You blew those guys away without counting. Good times.
Oh yeah,
Sweet
people are
Jesus.
evil. People are evil, which is so strange because you don't know. No one knows what was causing this, but you're letting strangers from far and wide jump into your car.
Yes. It was a weird kind of a social commentary because earlier there was like one car, like the owner of the diner wasn't taking anybody. He just drove away.
Right.
But there were other people who were like, "Sure, take your time, finish your conversation. We got nowhere else to be." You know what I mean?
I mean, there's just many things wrong, as we said, and here's another thing that was very confusing.
yes.
So Betty Buckley is dead. She got the crazies from being in the garden by herself, which made no sense.
Well, that was the thing. It's like now they're picking off the single people.
So Zoe and the child were, for some reason, outside in what could be called, it was supposed to be a spring house, but it looks like when you get kidnapped hitchhiking, the place they chain you up.
That's
Why
correct.
would they be in there supposedly playing for hours in a square with water? and a
Yes.
code?
Well, and they'd already
Laughing and giggling.
established that Betty Buckley, because they come across, she's another person they come across who's like, she's staying in her home and she invites them to stay with them, but she's kind, you can tell she's nuts.
She's
Literally,
off the grid, doesn't know current events, has no electricity.
I mean, Zoe Deschanel describes her as exorcisty, which I don't even know what the hell that means.
I don't know. Maybe
Who's
she
to
needs
say?
one. Maybe she was in that. I don't know.
Well, because it was literally they were having a little laugh at dinner, and then the little girl reaches for a biscuit or
Cookie
something,
or something. Yeah.
something, and Betty Buckley swats her hand and says like, it's not nice to touch other people's things or some kind of crazy thing. And then before they go to bed, she's like, "You're just trying to kill me and steal my stuff." And then they go like, "Okay,
Like,
well, let's go to
red
sleep
flag,
now."
Red flag, red flag.
These are big red flags. And so Marky Mark wakes up the next morning and no one's around. He doesn't know where they are. Where is everybody? And this is what you're talking about. Yeah, his wife and the little girl go off and just play in the in the outhouse or in the barn or in the rape shack. I don't know what was happening. It's
The
a horror story.
rape shack is a little old place where
We can get together.
you can get raped together. Oh my god.
Sweet Jesus. So good times. Any other highlights that you want to talk about?
Oh, will the circle be unbroken? Because at the very end, they quote, "An act of nature you will never understand."
Right. That kind of flies in the face of science, though, in my opinion. They don't just throw up their hands and be like, "Oh well, we'll never get this."
I give up.
Deuces.
I'm looking at my notes. I have "Why Mrs. Jones." Why do I have that written down?
Because that was the name of Betty Buckley.
Oh, okay.
Not.
I also put, "It's not always windy." Literally, if I
Yes.
wasn't watching TV and I was just watching Netflix, I might have missed this whole thing and just sat in my house. You know what I mean? Like if it was happening real time.
Right.
Because I barely watch the news at all. I'm certainly not listening to the radio. So unless people are running down the street screaming right in front of me, I might be just like laying on my couch. And then the next day, I'm like, what?
You
When
have
did
missed it
that
all.
happen?
You
I
are
would
Betty
miss it all.
Buckley, is what you're
I am
saying.
Betty Buckley. Don't take what isn't yours. Oh my God.
Shall we do behind the scenes?
Please.
Mark Wahlberg admitted that he regrets working on this movie,
Yeah, as he should.
but said, "You can't blame me for wanting to try a science teacher. At least I wasn't playing a cop or a crook."
Okay, what does that mean? What, I don't even understand that.
Who the hell? Basically, he was trying to play against type, I guess is what he's trying to say.
Oh, why don't we just try acting? How can we try that?
Exactly. Who is he? Come on.
Hey, take a page from old Donnie. He was in The Sixth Sense.
That is true. Well, clearly Donnie got the acting genes. And let me say this. I like Mark Wahlberg. I generally find his performances enjoyable. And frankly, I found him enjoyable in this one.
He's like Schwarzenegger, They're just kind of an interesting character. They have terrible voices. They're likable nonetheless.
Yes. Yes. Not so much in this movie.
Yeah, no.
The voice of Joey on the phone, the guy with the tiramisu,
Was Donnie Wahlberg.
M.
Was
Night Shyamalan.
Shyamalan.
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan.
He's
Yep.
trying to throw a little Hitchcock in there.
He did. He always does that. He's always pops up in some respect in these movies.
All right.
He wrote the screenplay with Mark Wahlberg in mind. Nicely
Oh my
done.
God. Did he ever meet Mark Wahlberg or see him on a movie?
He must have seen him in something, right?
Was he thinking of, what was the Mark Wahlberg movie where he was like the abusive, crazy boyfriend?
That was Fear with Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
No, he
Maybe
saw
was
him.
thinking of that.
He saw him when he was with the Funky Bunch.
It was
I
the
think that's-
Funky Bunch that triggered all that. He's
was
like,
it.
he could be a science teacher.
This movie was shot completely in sequence, like a play.
I don't care about that stuff.
Well, because usually they don't do it that way. So
Yeah,
it's
but
important to
now
note.
it seems like every time something new comes out, they always go, and they shot it in sequence. It seems like everybody's trying to do that now. They shot it in film. Oh, okay. But is the movie good, or should I just see it because you shot it in sequence?
No, you
Or
should
should
not.
should I just see it because you shot it with film? If
The-
you're pressing that hard with that, methinks there's other
That's all it
things
is.
different.
That's
Yeah.
all you need to know. The DVD.
Methinks.
The DVD contains a deleted scene of a piano recital that suddenly becomes tragic. I don't even know what that means. They didn't. They were making mistakes playing the piano. Who's to say? How does one become a piano recital become tragic? Anyway, I guess the lion attack and porch shooting scenes were originally much more gruesome.
Well, good, because they're much more stupid right now. They're ridiculous with some bad CGI.
Mark Wahlberg improvised the line, "Be scientific, douchebag."
Oh, I believe it.
That does seem. I believe that wholeheartedly.
That's right.
No one's taken the time to write that down. M. Night's not like, what should he say here? I got it. Be scientific, douchebag.
Quite frankly, this whole thing seems like it's like a Larry David thing where they just give you a sketch and you just make up your own lines as you go.
It's clearly that.
Unfortunately, not as successful as Curb.
In a deleted scene, Elliot, who is Mark Wahlberg, and Alma, who is Zooey Deschanel, have a fight and then make up. And it's intended to serve as the movie's introduction. But then people just didn't. They just decided who gives a damn, basically, about their relationship.
No one cares. No one understands. It's ridiculous.
Well, they literally said they wanted the audience to kind of learn about the couple's issues as the narrative unfolded. Sadly, you never really learn about the couple's issues as far as I'm concerned.
Nor does it matter.
Who gives a damn?
Nothing about that even matters. It does not push the story forward in any way.
This is true.
It's jibba jabba, as we say.
This was M. Night Shyamalan's first R-rated film.
Oh, jeez.
There
Who
you
cares? Go. Boo!
Amy Adams was considered to play the part of Alma, but she declined.
I don't care for Amy Adams.
She said, "I'm out. No can do."
I said, Amy Adams, out.
Oh. Very sad.
Is this one of your lost loves?
No, not really. I mean, she's fine. No, there's certain actors that pop up and you're like, okay. And they're big for like 5 years and then they kind of go away. So
Whatever
I think she's on that
happened to
list.
Easy A Girl? I always liked her.
She's Emma Stone. She's in Cruella.
Oh, yeah. Oh, do you think I'm going to see that shit? I don't have the girls.
We saw it.
Exactly.
The redhead in the park at the beginning of the movie, who was also in Cabin in the Woods, has disowned this film and claims to hate it, and she refuses to talk about the film when asked about it. She's literally in 30 seconds of the movie.
Yeah, you didn't return the check, sister, so
Yeah,
let's
clearly
not be
not.
all uppity.
The word happen and variations of it are said 25 times throughout the movie.
What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Good Lord. The little girl, Jess, was played by Ashlyn Sanchez, and this is the last movie she ever acted in.
Her parents said, that's it. That's it. Not again. Damn you, M. Night Shyamalan. You've ruined my daughter's acting career.
It's true. It was such a horror story. They're like, we're out. No can do. It's funny. M. Night had written this movie, and it was called The Green Effect. And he took it out and presented it to studios. And keep in mind, this is after Signs. This is after Sixth Sense. This is after, Unbreakable, when he was still kind of a big stuff. You know what I'm saying? And every studio passed on it.
That should give you a tip or due.
So he took it and kind of reworked it. Changed the title to The Happening, which we've established doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And managed to find one production company.
They could have called it like April 2nd. that would have had
Basically.
more meaning. That
It's a
would have
sad
had more meaning.
You know what's funny? I watched this Charles Bronson movie the other day.
Death Wish?
Because that's what I do. It was called 10 to Midnight. And it's about Charles Bronson hunting down a serial killer.
Isn't he always hunting somebody down?
He's always, okay, this time it's personal with Charles Bronson.
It's always personal.
Yeah. There's no reason why it's called 10 to Midnight. The title doesn't reflect anything in the script. It was literally like they had the title and they had the script and they just put them together. So who gives
They're
a
like,
damn?
we got this great title. Now, how can we write a story around it?
Well, and it's like, if you've got that title, how hard is it to say there's a deadline before the killer kills again? I mean, come up with something to work in the title. No, we can't be bothered.
Because that's a great title. Too bad we wasted it.
It's like, we can't be bothered to work it. It's the same thing with that damn mood ring. It's like, I can't be bothered. Sorry. What you get is what you get, and you don't get upset. It's a very sad situation.
Editing, people, editing.
But this is about that time that the tide started to turn. He had done Lady in the Water, and people were like, people thought that was PU.
I love Lady in the Water.
Okay,
the
you're the one.
mermaid that lives at the bottom of the swimming pool.
You're the one. Bryce Dallas Howard.
I love that one.
I started to turn on him about the time of The Village.
Oh, The Village I was turning. And quite frankly, The Lady in the Water, I just by chance fell upon on HBO. Yeah.
It's a sad situation. After The Happening, so The Happening, people were like, universally, people were like, we hate this movie.
We're like, hate this movie, and we hate you, M.
And we hate you. But the worst was yet to come. A year or two later, he did the movie The Last Airbender.
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Well, no, it was made based upon this
anime.
cartoon anime,
Yeah.
which was the cartoon anime was wildly popular. People loved it. So when he did his M. Night Shyamalan on it, it was a horror story.
People were
Horror.
rioting.
People were wildly upset. So then it was like, oh, no. We can no longer put From the Mind of M. Night Shyamalan on it. Because now it's starting to drive people away.
Oh.
It's a sad situation.
So now it's just going to be Night Shyamalan.
Well, he kind of had...
Do we even know what the M stand for? Because it could be like Marky Mark.
That's exactly what it
Shyamalan.
is. Night is just a nickname he picked up in college. Did you know that?
That sounds racist.
Hopefully that's not why he's called Night. Good Lord. Anyway, let's talk about the cast, shall we? We already talked about M. Night Shyamalan. We don't need to know anything
We've talked
else about
enough. He's home crying listening to this.
Mark Wahlberg played Elliot, the science teacher. Good Lord. You know what he's from.
I mean, terrible names.
Very sad. Zoe Deschanel played Alma, his wife.
Come on.
Most successfully, she was the star of The New Girl from 2011 to 2018. Also, 500 Days of Summer,
Yes,
Trolls.
500 Days of Summer is 1,000 times better than this movie.
She is currently the host with, Michael Bolton, the host of Celebrity Dating Game.
To be her dad. Oh my God.
Yeah,
So- Isn't she like a singer too? Why couldn't Marky Mark and Zoe bust out in some kind of song during the show?
because I find it offensive when people try to work in their singing into the movie, especially if they're like I'm an aspiring singer. It's like, come on. No can do.
That offend you?
It offends me greatly.
Not spending $12 for this movie? Plus the $25 for the popcorn?
I did not do that. John Leguizamo plays the buddy who's a math teacher, Julian. Of course, you know him from Moulin Rouge. Actually, I didn't even know he was in that. He was Toulouse-Lautrec in Moulin Rouge, evidently.
God.
He was in Spawn, The Pest, Romeo and Juliet. You know him, don't you?
I didn't see any of those. And yet I know John Leguizamo.
In a bizarre cameo, Cameron from Ferris Bueller plays the principal. He's in 2 minutes of the movie. Very
I have
upsetting.
no memory of that.
Yes.
I hate Ferris Bueller's Day Off anyway.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. Cut the mic. Cut the mic. This is upsetting to me. We're not even going to touch that. The guy who drives the Jeep with John Leguizamo riding shotgun.
Yes.
You never see his face straight on, but he is famous because he was the star of Clerks. He was the star of Clerks 2. His name's Brian O'Halloran. He was the main character of Clerks.
Wait, who was he in this?
He was the driver of the Jeep that John Leguizamo gets into. Yes. And you never see, you see his...
Foxy.
you just see like his cheek because you never get a full on look at his face. It's the most bizarre.
Oh my God.
And he's, I guess, when they become under the influence of craziness,
Yes.
he hits a tree. I didn't even mention this goofball.
Oh, it shot out like a rocket.
Shot out through the windshield, but somebody shoots out the other side too, and it's not John Leguizamo. John Leguizamo is wearing a seatbelt and gets out of the car and slices his wrist, but did somebody just shoot right over his shoulder? Or I'm not even sure.
And it was a guy. Because the only other person would have been the chick in the back. Who?
Well, there were 3 people in the back seat. One of them was a little girl that he starts to do the math experiment, or math riddle with. But I think there were 2 other randos. This is neither here nor there. Let's talk about the rating, shall we?
God. Oh my God.
Rotten Tomatoes currently gives this 18% rotten.
Ooh, that's a severe strap from Rotten Tomatoes.
This might be one of the lowest rated movies that we have ever done. Let me look at
and Roger Ebert, what did he say from Beyond
Let's see
the
if I can
Grave?
find anybody we recognize. It's who's to say?
I don't want to hear a review from like Fangoria or Bob Guccione.
We'll check it out. Rex Reed. Rex Reed said, for a movie with the potential for so much global warming electricity, it's disappointingly low on voltage.
Oh, so
Thanks,
clever.
Thanks, Rex Reed.
That was so clever.
Richard Roper gave it a positive review.
Who's that? Is that like Mr. Roper?
Mr. Roper. No, he was former host of Ebert and Roper. He replaced Gene Siskel. He was the first guy. It almost dares you to roll your eyes or laugh at certain scenes that are supposed to be deadly serious.
It forces you at gunpoint.
Yes. But you know what? I appreciated this creatively offbeat, daring sci-fi mind trip.
And that's why he was no replacement for Siskel.
It's a very sad situation.
That was like, I'm going to find something kind to say at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely dares you to laugh, as we've talked about multiple times.
It compels you to laugh at them, not with them.
Roger Ebert.
Uh-oh.
3 out of 4.
What?
Shyamalan's approach is more effective than smash and grab plot mongering. His use of the landscape is disturbingly effective. The performances by Wahlberg and Deschanel bring a quiet dignity to their characters.
Quiet dignity? Oh.
That is madness.
Poor Roger.
That is damn.
He must have been getting the chemotherapy.
Oh, sweet.
Something bad.
That is the
He must have been far along.
Look, you can like this movie or not like this movie.
No,
That's
you
fine.
can't. No, you can't. It's not fine.
But what you can't do is praise the acting performances in this movie. You can't do that. That's a bridge too far.
Once you do that, it is a bridge too far, and now you're suspect.
You're suspect.
All credibility is lost.
No question. So what's your rating?
Well, first of all, we do have to say the acting is still better than Keanu Reeves in Dracula. Let's just put that out there. Still better than that.
I would say Marky Mark is probably a little bit better than Keanu. I would say
Marky Mark is Laurence Olivier in Hamlet compared to Keanu in Dracula.
I think you're giving him a little too much credit. I think Zooey Deschanel in this, and I'm sure she's a very fine person, but it was literally like looking into the dull, lifeless eyes of a doll. That's all I'm going to say.
I think that's her acting style because in some places it works. Because I'm kind of thinking that's how she was in 500 Days of Summer, but it fit that. You know what it is? She plays she. She's Kevin Costner. Boom.
I've said this before. Whenever you say, oh, they're just playing themselves, I'm like, maybe themselves after a massive head injury. After a frontal lobotomy.
When you see the same characterization, no matter what the hell the role is, you start to say, is it acting?
You start asking questions, is what you're saying.
Start asking questions. But now
so what is your rating, for God's sakes?
Oh, for sure. My rating is 2 out of 5 sewing needles shoved into my frickin' eye so I don't ever have to see this movie again.
I'm gonna give it 2.5 laying down in front of the lawnmowers. I have to say that. I think there are times.
Does that mean the lawnmower actually only goes over 2.5 of you?
Just 2.5 of you. I think there are times where it's laughable in kind of a good way. It's not even remotely scary because let's be honest, how scary can Plants in the Wind truly be? You know what I mean? And like I said, the performances are so ridiculous. There are times where you can appreciate and laugh about it, but it's definitely not anything worth like rushing out to see. That's for damn shizzle.
I think the Betty Buckley stuff was the best. She was acting crazy, but she was the best part.
Well, and I'll say this. I think everybody else kind of was pretty good in terms of their performances.
Right. John Leguizamo was perfectly fine.
Right. Everybody else was perfectly fine. It was just the two leads, which is a problem.
Thank you, Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder.
Clearly. So, thank you very much. Go to our page on Facebook at The Podcast That Wouldn't Die. Go to our page on Twitter at TPodcast, TW Die. Aaron, we're on the Insta.
The Insta, we are The Podcast That Wouldn't Die.
____. So there you go.
Remember, it's either all one word or like an underscore after everything.
I mean, who's to say?
You can email us at The Podcast That Wouldn't Die. That's one word.
That is true. And no punctuation.
But what's most important is that 5-star rating on Apple.
That is true. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. Anywhere where the finer podcasts are available.
Exactly. Because we need to get the sponsorship so Erin doesn't have to like hold her microphone that keeps falling off every time I try to record.
We don't have to give them all the ins and the outs of our financial hardships.
This
but thank
is
you
the
very
behind the scenes
clearly
of the show.
So like, share, subscribe, and review for God's sakes.
Tell a friend, phone a friend.
Please do.
Tell
Next
grandma
week,
to listen.
tell her. And what else is she doing? She's got the time.
She got her gas mask on, watching the TV.
Faux show.
Mark to show up.
Next week, we're going to be doing the horror classic, Silent Rage. I'm not going to tell you anything about this. Aaron, I'm not going to tell you anything about this.
I know nothing about it, and I'm frightened because I made Kevin watch this movie without telling him anything about it.
So there you go. Good times. You can watch it. I think it's on the Roku channel. It's on Tubi.
On your
or not to be.
Streaming services.
Right. I'm assuming you don't own it. I mean, you could probably get it at the library.
Wait,
Anywho,
are you saying you don't own it?
I do not own it.
Whoa.
So there you go. That should tell you something. So check that out. Send in your comments, questions, or favorite scenes, and maybe we'll talk about it on the show. It's a good time.
And if your friends ask, what is our podcast? We're really like a book club for films. So you're supposed to, the idea is you're going to watch this film and then you're going to tune in and you're either going to agree or disagree.
It's an interactive experience, really. If you know what I'm saying.
In the fact that Kevin and I interact, you can shout some obscenity on Twitter if you'd like. If you do.
Well, our voices interact with your ears. I think it's the safest way to.
I see.
So thank you very much, and be well.